lot of things are about to happen in Capitol Hill around crypto, so we wanted to break down a little bit of the activities with Congress and go a little bit deeper. So today we're going to do that. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. And we're going to have a special guest today, and it is Congressman Jake Auchincloss. He is, of course, coming in from Massachusetts. A couple of things that he has done is the CBDC Anti-Surveillance Act. He voted against that. He also voted for FIT 21 and also the SOB 121, which was kind of the custodial component for banks. So he's kind of in the camp of an A rating when it comes to Coinbase's stand with crypto. So that's one factor. And I want to play a short clip before we bring him in, and then we'll get into some questions. So let's take a look.
They are wrong. The framers of the Constitution understood the importance of a strong and stable national currency, which is why they granted Congress the exclusive power to coin money and regulate its value, which is why I am introducing the Power to Mint Act. This bill clearly prohibits the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department from issuing a CBDC without authorization from Congress.
All right, so there you go. CBDC, very adamant about that, and I wanted to bring Jake in now, so let's just drop him in. Hey, Jake, how are you?
I'm well, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. Well, listen, we're going to dive into a lot of details today, and I want to get into some of the key things that have been happening there in Congress. And of course, some of the things that we're looking at, if you consider where the Stablecoin Bill is today, where do you think it stands right now on the possibility of a Stablecoin bill getting through the Senate here in early 2025?
I think Congress is ready to pass crypto legislation. If you look at the votes for FIT 21 and for SAB 121, if you look at the elevation of French Hill to the chairmanship of the Financial Services Committee in the House, you see how the SEC is being configured by the Trump administration. The stars are aligning for Washington to pass clear rules of the road for the crypto industry.
Well, this seems to be lining up as a bipartisan issue that both, your party as well as the Republicans have been able to start to kind of understand the impact on Americans. So I would agree with you. I think we're starting to see some good signs here going forward. And also from a global standpoint, the United States, I think, will be leveling up in terms of competitiveness around the world, especially if they start to embrace what's happening in the blockchain side of things. I wanted to go to another tweet. This is Bob Mason. He was talking about the SEC labeling RLUSD, which is their most recent stablecoin passage that went through the New York regulator. And if you look at where Ripple is right now, they've made it through pretty much one phase of, being challenged by the SEC. You think we could be now in another phase here where their stablecoin gets challenged by the SEC? Any thoughts on that?
No thoughts on that. I can't weigh in on enforcement actions by regulatory agencies. I don't have the insight to how they've been conducting their own due process internally. What I can say, and I think what is plain to see, is that the Trump administration is going to nominate SEC committee members who are ready to set aside regulation by enforcement and to start doing regulation by rule of law.
Well, I would agree with that because, we've seen just that very situation kind of fall into place. Right here's Brian Armstrong coming in from Coinbase. And this was the stand with crypto advocates. This, of course, we saw just play out this week where the SEC Commissioner Crenshaw was not renominated. So that, to your point, is that we're starting to see a lot more, favoritism at the SEC, at least in the calibration of where these commissioners are going to be playing out in a lot of this regulatory alignment here. Do you feel that a lot of lawmakers are looking at this right now and saying, okay, this is a major lobbying group. We're starting to see a lot more alignment here. What do you think the future of that kind of scenario playing out within DC is with what Fairshake and Coinbase has been able to do?
The most effective advocacy is use cases, is entrepreneurs, investors demonstrating that through building in the blockchain, there are products, there are services that my constituents can't live without. When those use cases begin to ripen and become widely used, then it becomes a constituency unto itself, because we want to make sure that our constituents have access to the tools and the products that they use to manage their assets, to pursue their creative endeavors. And that's what I always press the crypto industry on is, you got stablecoins. I see stablecoins. I understand the efficacy and the utility of stablecoins, particularly as in international trade. What I want to see is more instances of empowering the creative class in particular. Show me how you're disintermediating big tech, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Facebook, through the use of blockchain. And I look towards Chris Dixon's Read, Write, Own as the pathway, right? The first era of the web was protocol networks that had a lot of great open source attributes, but also they had challenges in creating incentives for entrepreneurs to build in them, like RSS feeds or email. The second era of the web was these corporate networks where you did have incentives to deliver great products and services, but unfortunately you got a lot of abusive, monopolistic, and rent-seeking behavior, like from Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. And now the third era of the web, could be combining the best of both the protocol and the corporate networks, and that you create incentives for entrepreneurs to build within the blockchain because of digital scarcity and because you can have ownership, but you also have some of the best of the protocol network open source ownership and lack of monopolistic behavior. I want to see that demonstrated, though. I want to see Web3 use cases that my constituents can't live without. That is how the industry, I think, gets accepted by regulators, is delivering value.
Well, I think a couple of things you hit on there. Use case, of course, has been thwarted mostly because innovation has been thwarted by the regulatory framework that's been pretty much put down by DC. So I would agree with you. Once that we start to see that loosen up, I think the innovators are going to come out and we'll see innovation come back to the United States, hopefully, and get into exactly what you're talking about. Do you think that your current colleagues within DC, that maybe don't understand technology as much, maybe they were not completely aware of where blockchain is today, do you feel like they are starting to grasp it, or is there an education process still taking place?
Education process still taking place, and candidly, it's because the use cases that are most salient to most policymakers, and frankly, probably still to most Americans, are one, currencies that seem to be immensely volatile and not suitable for units of account or mediums of exchange or stores of value. And two, like these esoteric curiosities, these sort of cat coins or NFTs and stuff like that. Like, again, stablecoin being an important exception because stablecoin as a store of value in other countries has demonstrated its efficacy. Stablecoin as a medium of exchange for international trade has demonstrated its utility. Where are the other use cases, though? That's what we need to see. I want to see Web 3.0 deliver on its promise. And if it does so, I think it can flourish here in the United States. If it doesn't, that's going to be on the entrepreneurs and the investors. Yeah. We in the government should be ensuring that there's no waste, fraud, and abuse, and should be ensuring that the US dollar remains the world's reserve currency, should be protecting consumers. But we shouldn't be trying to play favorites. We should give Web 3.0 a chance to succeed.
You were talking about esoteric cat coins. One thing that we have seen in the meme coin craze is you have to remember a lot of these people are collectors. So just like any other collector, it's just a different kind of collection, whether you agree or disagree with NFTs. But if you compare this to some other areas that are in real world application and use, like loyalty points, Starbucks, American Airlines, right, almost any company out there who deflates those loyalty points, where the blockchain and those kind of solutions would be able to solve those kind of things. So I think this is a challenge that we're going to probably see a lot more of. The question is being able to see it actually get through the United States and not end up offshore, which is the big problem.
And what's being built on the Solana layer, I think, is interesting in that respect as well, right? The incentives for infrastructure and telecom development, I've been tracking that. So I do see these green shoots, and I want them to sprout here in the United States.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, I want to also, you're from Massachusetts. This is probably the hotbed of anti-crypto activity. And of course, you've got Stephen Lynch up there. You've got Elizabeth Warren coming in. How do you combat that? Because your position seems to be a little bit more pro-innovation and pro-crypto versus what we've seen coming out of some of these hotbeds that are standing against crypto. Do you feel like there is still that kind of tone, even not speaking for other congresspeople, but within DC in general? Do you feel that the tone is still that anti-crypto army, choke point 2.0 coming at the industry, or do you feel like that's going to be defended off with Trump's administration?
No, I don't think that's the tone. And again, I think the SAB 121 and FIT 21 votes, where you got, I think, what was it, 76 or 77 Democrats for FIT 21, for example, I think that demonstrates that there is a lot of policymakers ready to invite in the crypto industry to be, well regulated and to be able to succeed or not based on the utility it brings to consumers, which is what every industry should be able to do.
Right.
I think it's when you're trying to build coalitions, it's just important to know who's persuadable and who's not. Those colleagues of mine you pointed out, I work with them on a lot of other issues, with Senator Warren, for example, on trying to lower drug prices by taking on drug pricing middlemen. So there's lots of areas that we can work together. This isn't one of them. That's fine. There's a lot of other members where they're still learning about the industry and haven't made up their mind, and we work with them on that issue. To me, it comes down to freedom and enterprise. The promise of blockchain to me has always been fundamentally that it is a check against centralized, unaccountable power, which is contrary to AI, right? Many aspects of AI feel very centralizing, feel very authoritarian, very top down. I like the fact that blockchain is something that empowers individuals, both against government power, but also against corporate power, and empowers these individuals to build things in the digital world that matter. And I think that's core to freedom and core to enterprise and core to who we are as Americans. And those entrepreneurs deserve to be able to build with a clear set of rules of the road.
So one quick question to you, and then I'll let you go, is I wanted to get on the TikTok scenario that's playing out right now. The courts have said, listen, we got to get a divestiture. Most likely that's going to happen. But at the same time, here recently, we've seen Trump not necessarily say that this could be the route. What is your opinion? And first of all, if we go on the 19th, because I think that's the date that it possibly will come off some of the app stores, it won't be banned for use, but banned for where you can get access to it. Do you think that the Trump administration will hold the line on protecting Americans' privacies with forcing the divestiture of ByteDance's TikTok, or do you think they may work something out and it continues as it is today?
You're asking me if Donald Trump is going to uphold the rule of law, which is not a prediction I'm willing to make given his track record. I was a co-lead of the TikTok divestment bill because I think that empowering the Chinese Communist Party, our pacing adversary of the 21st century, to be the dominant media and information provider to 170 million Americans is absurd and is terrible public policy. We need to regulate social media platforms for disinformation, for intimate privacy violations, for cyber harassment and bullying. But we can't do that if they're not subject to US law. And TikTok is quite plainly subject to Chinese, not American law. So step number one is it needs to come under the remit of the United States Congress, or else it needs to get out of here.
Yeah. I want to play a clip for you because this will give you a recap, and also our audience, because sometimes the audience doesn't really know all of what we're talking about. So I want to make sure they're caught up on it. So let me play this clip for them, and I want to get your opinion on it afterwards. Take a look.
So are you going to try to protect TikTok, just very quick, once you're in office?
I'm going to try and make it so that other companies don't become an even bigger monopoly.
Okay.
What did we learn about the meeting between Trump and Chu?
He's, he would be the TikTok CEO, would be the latest in many tech CEOs who are either donating to Trump's inauguration campaign or actually going and meeting with him in person. So
my partnership with you, with your support, I will try to make it happen. That's good. All right, 200.
How do you plan to stop the ban on TikTok next month?
I have a warm spot in my heart for TikTok.
Does that imply to you that he will let TikTok remain business as usual?
I don't interpret it that way at all. The legal system that we have in this country is doing its thing.
Well, I know Frank McCourt, who was just speaking, and I think he is absolutely right. Frankly, Congress should be passing a law on that. I've been trying.
We're part of this thing called Project Liberty. Frank McCourt is making a bid right now to buy TikTok. And if we can purchase TikTok USA, 170 million users, that becomes part of this whole world. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. They're so dependent on grabbing your data information, controlling it. It's the antithesis of what blockchain is all about.
Well, we're definitely rooting for McCourt and you guys on TikTok. We'll see about that. Hopefully it works.
We have a really good head start, John, Dominic.
And could be your first, to your point, one of the first real use cases, a social media platforms that's decentralized, protecting Americans' privacy and their data. When you look at that compilation of clips there, because you see Trump talking with tech CEOs at ByteDance, talking with Masa over at SoftBank, one of the key investors, and then you look at some of the early stage companies that are trying to potentially participate in this, I'm just worried. Do you think we're going to get a rug pull here, as they say in our industry?
Again, I'm just not going to prognosticate on what Donald Trump is going to do. His track record on obeying the law or on not changing his mind is poor. What I can say is that in different ways, all three branches of the federal government have weighed in on this issue previously, and all three branches of government have said it is absolutely legal to force TikTok to divest itself of Chinese Communist Party ownership. The idea that the Politburo in Beijing has civil liberties that the US Constitution has to protect is just doesn't stand up to basic legal scrutiny.
Sure.
People can post whatever they want online, subject to tort law, but you don't have a right to have that content amplified by a foreign adversary, right?
Yeah.
And amplified, I would say, in a very targeted manner to suppress pro-Western and to amplify anti-Western memes. So this to me is a slam dunk case. And I think to your deeper point, Paul, what we have to get away from is all of these Web 2.0 social media platforms, the Metas, the TikToks, the Instagrams, because they're all attention fracking our youth. They monetize people's attention spans, sell them off to the advertisers, and thereby their incentive is to keep you scrolling, to keep you angry, and to keep you isolated.
Yeah. Well, it's been very successful so far. We're going to see how this starts to play it. If we do get a true decentralized social media, a federated social media, this will be one of the big steps, I think, in 2025 and beyond for innovation. So it's going to be one to watch for sure. Congressman, it's been great having you on. Thank you so much for coming in today. We really appreciate your time. Thanks for stopping in.
Happy holidays.
All right, so you guys, if you're not tuned in to the Diamond Circle, make sure and get into that right now. It's a great place to get additional content from us, more podcasts, more research, all about what we do here on a daily basis, which really dive deep into the blockchain industry and the innovation of technology. Of course, catch me out there on X at Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.